Awesome. All right. So we're just going to be talking a little bit, sharing a little bit of experience. Who here would consider themselves an expert at Elixir? Like really good, like world class at Elixir. I mean, hopefully they'd be here if they're going to be anywhere. Notice I'm not holding up my hand. I'm not one of those people. So over the last 4 years, I came to my first ElixirConf in 2014. And that's kind of when I kind of fell in love with the language, and I thought it'd be really cool to check out this, frankly, more ergonomic extension to this really awesome platform of Erlang. Enough of that, though. Let's hop to things that we learned along the way. One thing I learned in this last couple of years at my job, simple deploys are really, really great, and finding simple ways to get your things up and running and then debug them at 2 in the morning when you're on call and you've been woken up by the pager and you're trying to figure out why things aren't working. The fewer moving parts, the better, at least until you've really ironed out all of your problems. If you've somehow inherited maybe a legacy Elixir code base or a kind of complicated situation, start removing complexity. I think that we shouldn't feel bad about removing complexity if it's something that makes our lives easier. Second thing, so I've learned that pipelines are really, really magic, and I love pipelines. It's one of, like, the pipe operator is one of the greatest parts of Elixir. Unfortunately, sometimes we get a little carried away with language features, and luckily we had the with statement come along, and that's greatly improved code readability. On a related note, so if you're preferring withs over pipelines, prefer error tuples over either throwing exceptions, which is not nice, or giving back just raw data. Like have an error tuple, let the users and the consumers of your functions and libraries actually see what went wrong in the different flavors of things. As alluded to in some of the talks today, when you're converting business logic over into its kind of isolated, islands of sanity, you want to make sure that there are convenient ways for people to interact with that and convenient ways for the existing language features to pick up on that. So prefer with over pipelines is something I've kind of started taking as gospel, and getting good error tuples to kind of enhance that. I've had to learn the difference and the different situations in which I like tuples, maps, structs, and these sorts of things. Again, as people have been kind of discovering, tuples always work. They're our little workhorses. They do a great job. And then sometimes we get carried away with maps. And let's say that you're talking to maybe a large database, or you're talking to a document store or something, and you're getting back a lot of unstructured data. The temptation is to get these little maps back and then just kind of hand them around everywhere. And I hope that nobody else has committed this sin. I certainly have. If you've also done this thing where you just kind of have maps and you add stuff to them and kind of shuffle it through, like maybe we were used to doing in Express applications, and Node is a purely random example. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. We've all done it. We shipped it. It worked. We made money. But don't. Look at your def modules. Look at defining structs. Look at limiting keys. In cases where you're using, like, say, ecto schemas or something, leverage utilities that have already put a lot of that legwork into giving you nice, defined, hard, dependable data structures. And then you'll be able to do cool things like pattern match on those data structures, and in consuming functions being able to say, hey, I know exactly what's here. Hey, I know that these fields are always going to be valid in my business context. Just put that little extra effort in to sanitizing things at the boundary of your logic, and I've learned to make your life so much easier. Or at least it'll make my life easier. And I would appreciate that. Fourth thing that I've learned is that as wonderful as Elixir and Erlang are at a lot of things, like one of their greatest things is like decoding binary data. If you have any chance to pull apart a binary data structure in your day-to-day work, you might not, but like do it on a weekend, it's really fun. What it's very bad at is performantly setting individual bytes. I know a fellow who was working on a Minecraft server written in Elixir. And the problem they ran into is that Minecraft stores all of its map data as just a huge honking pile of bytes. That's pretty good for reading and pretty good for storage. But in order to update a single block, they had to set 1 byte. And unfortunately, there was no convenient way of setting a single byte without using nifs or anything. So they ended up duplicating the entire map. And it ended up being like about 8 to 16 megabytes for the entire map, and they created a new object allocation every time they changed 1 block in a Minecraft server. If you leave like 12 kids running around building a castle, you're going to have a bad time. So be careful with your binaries. Kind of last thing is a nice little foot gun. How are we on time? Oh, sweet, on schedule. So Last thing is if you're using interactive ports, let's say that you are going ahead and using existing code that uses standard in, standard out, and all these good things to communicate. If it is running in interactive mode instead of batch mode on Unix, you will find that processes do not behave. So wrap them in standard buff or gstandard buff if you are a Mac user, and you will be able to communicate with them as though they were an interactive process the way everything intended. Thank you.